Okay, I'm here with Richard Lorber, who is the chairman and CEO of Keener Lorber Media Group, a film distribution pioneer with over 45 years in the business. Um, you were a former academic. You're also a painter, which I recently discovered, and an art enthusiast. Uh, your topic, which is one that is very important to me, that I we went back and forth, and I wanted to make sure I worded this properly, and I think we got it, which is the fallacy of polarization in independent distribution strategies.
I'll try to explicate that without tripping over my tongue.
So I will start the 20-minute timer, and if you could just tell me why you chose this topic.
It's a topic that's it's close to my thinking about the state of the independent and traditional film industry, coming to the world of film from the business side as a distributor and as a self-appointed curator. I'm not a producer. I don't make films. I'm acutely aware of the challenges and frankly opportunities we see as this marketplace and the environment for independent work keeps changing. Um, I think there is a problem that I see in the frustration of so many in the film community, which has led to a kind of maybe even a demonization of the big bad distributor, the perception that, you're going to get ripped off and the distributor is going to grab all the benefits and the money and you're going to be left with peanuts. The alternative to that is selling out and maybe selling your soul to a big streamer, and you'll get money, but you'll never get seen the way you want the film to be seen on the big screen. Uh, I think the list goes on. Where other ways in which the dangers and the disappointments of working with a traditional distributor or a big corporate entity that has a pay one service have become a cause for alarm.
Yeah.
I think the fallacy that I see is that there's an inattention to a lot of new models that some of the best smaller boutique independent distributors are frankly pioneering and learning from the worthy efforts of the independent, whether you call it indie, DIY, non-day, and whatever you want to call them. They're doing things that frankly we're all learning from, and at the same time, there are opportunities that we can provide and approaches to working together rather than working against or working in lieu of the opportunities for an independent filmmaker. So I think that there needs to be some clarity about what I consider more of a continuum between what is indie, DIY, non-D distribution, and working with specialty, preferably boutique distributors that do exercise TLC to the utmost, handling the films that they love. Those of us who are doing the way I'm doing the business that I'm describing, are passionate about film, passionate about the origins of cinema, the classics, but also breakthrough new works, as you know, what I've been writing about in my
Yeah.
Substack. And um, and I think there's a way for us to engage with filmmakers who have started a process on their own, either because they couldn't get the deal they wanted or believed it was due, and have gotten their distribution machine revved up to a point where they are in the festivals that they want to be in. They've got some brand identity from the film and from their own credentials. They've got possibly opening commitments from key theaters in some major markets, and they're spending their own money and they're dedicating their lives to this. And I've met a number of these filmmakers who, after spending literally a year to 2 years of their life working the path of their own self-distribution, have come and taken a step back and asked whether it was worth it, whether in fact the results justified changing their whole business model and effectively becoming distributors. I will say that some of these folks are as good or better than any distributor I know. They've been able to rally the resources and engage communities and eventize their screenings, and that's great. But they put their projects on the side burner.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is really a central conversation and something that needs to be figured out. within the non-D and independent community right now. Distribution's at the heart of it, and it seems like right now part of the frustration is festivals aren't what they used to be. If you make a film, you have to also be an entrepreneur. You have to market it yourself. You like you said, have to do the distributor's job. Um, and like even the example, I don't know if you're familiar with the Hundreds of Beavers example. Yeah, it's like a big example, but I think it's misconstrued really personally, because while they got distribution, their success actually came from the self-distribution and self-marketing that they did themselves. So not to go on too much of a tangent there, but I think this is such a big question. I know that Lorber is you're certainly doing many different types of distribution, which so it certainly seems like you're trying to figure this out in many different ways. I don't know if
Yep.
anyone has an answer, but
Well,
yeah,
we have prided ourselves in going it alone on the distribution path. We're direct with every platform. We are a 360-degree distributor, still working hard to release the best version, physical media, Blu-rays and 4Ks, et cetera. We release over 300 titles a year in physical. It's still an important part of our business. We have our own streaming platforms, Kino Film Collection, which is probably the fastest growing film collection now. And I can't tell you the numbers, but you'd be surprised at how substantial we are. Watch out, Criterion. They're great friends. We license titles to them, but we're catching up pretty fast. We have a TV series streaming platform, MHZ Choice. We have a robust educational department, and of course, theatrical is the beacon for the company. We still do about 25 to 30 films a year theatrically, including repertory and films released by our partners at Zeitgeist and Milestone, who are part of our company output. So, in the scheme of things, we can't do everything for everybody, but we are very selective and very brand conscious. And I think there are filmmakers who've gotten their opportunities to a certain point where they really need the resources that a company like ours can provide without taking away from what they've already done. Toward that end, we've just launched Kino Direct. Kino Direct is exactly intentioned to engage with filmmakers, mostly post-theatrical, after they've worked the festivals, after they've glowed under the halo of the acclaim they get on the festival circuit and accumulated awards, or had some opening dates in theatrical run. We can come in and advance their opportunity through all the other VOD and physical and educational platforms. And we're doing that now very actively with about, I'd say, 7 or 8 filmmakers, and we expect to engage 20 to 30 films for the Kino Direct business proposition in the next 12 months, in addition to the 25 or so that we're putting out theatrically ourselves. The theatrical releasing business is really broken. We know that.
yeah,
And we can't fix it. We're basically as much victim of it as the independent filmmakers are. Sometimes they have an advantage because exhibitors embrace them, and they do like the idea of having the creator on the stage in front of the film. But there are things that we can do and are doing that make a difference, in addition to the fact that we're still doing business with the major pay one streamers. No output deals. Those are few and far between now, apart from Netflix and Neoflix and Neon rather, and maybe A24. They just don't exist anymore. So that dream is out the window. But we are selectively selling occasionally to them, to Hulu, to Stars, et cetera. And we don't not pursue those opportunities, as well as licensing arrangements we have with Criterion for certain titles. So all of that becomes non-exclusive with our own Kino Film Collection. But having our own subscription VOD platform in-house now is a valuable backstop. It's not something that can generate hundreds of thousands of dollars of license fees at this point, but it is something that gives our filmmakers the kind of exposure that they're not going to get on a VOD platform, typically paid or even free. And it's not going to give them, and it's not going to blunt the chances of our selling it to one of the major platforms. So this sounds like a pitch, but it's really an observation.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I think we're all trying to figure it out. And so I'm when you say like the fallacy of the polarization, or I guess non-D and independent on the two sides,
Right.
the big distinction for you is like this need to self-distribute. You don't think it's as you don't think it should be as polarizing as
I think there's an excluded middle here. I think, the filmmakers say, well, either we're going to do a distribution deal or we're going to self-distribute, and we'll use all the tools and strategies that we're learning from all of the visionaries in that space, whether it's Peter Broderick going back 10 years, or Ted Hope, or John Race, or, and the list goes on. You know who they are. Is
yeah.
Frankly, there's a whole industry that's sprouted up among DIY strategists and others who are mining the disappointments and the frustrations, and some of it is very useful, some of it is opportunistic, frankly.
Yeah.
But on the other side are the big bad distributors who will take it all and pay you pittances and leave you, out in the cold. The reality is that there are very skilled distributors who are as passionate as the filmmakers. And it's not just my company. I have friends who run companies like, Strand and Film Movement and Oscilloscope, and the list goes on. And
Yeah.
they all have developed beautiful brands, very highly curated, skilled relationships, and they give the films that they take on a special value, which isn't something that a standalone film can achieve. Uh, I mean, I remember when I was just starting in the business in the 80s, we were beginning to release videos and such. And, people would say, well, I just was in the video store, and I went to the shelves, and I didn't know what I wanted, and it was foreign films, but I saw the Lorber brand, and I knew it was going to be something worth watching.
I
I
was
mean,
one of those people.
well,
Criterion and Lorber, like that's that was my education.
there's value in that, and the two toughest marketing challenges in the industry are building a brand and building a subscription business. We've got a pretty good brand, and we're on the way to having a very healthy subscription business. And I think we can put both of those to the service of a lot of the independents who can use it.
So I think for me, and I've written about what my thoughts on this a little bit, but I think for the problem I have with non-distribution is this expectation, and this almost like celebration of building your own audience and not really like presenting that that costs a lot of money that you need to market and it frankly goes against the sort of DIY approach in my opinion. And I know a lot of people will disagree with this, and I know within the framework of non-D, a lot of people are doing great stuff in terms of building an audience, and having effective marketing. Um, for me, I think to look at the big bad distributor, yes, there's a little bit of that sentiment. And then there's like the sort of film hub sentiment, which I think is like, oh, they're just going to buy everything and just throw it onto Tubi, and your film's going to disappear. So I think what you're doing is certainly something that is trying to figure this out. Um, where I would sort of wonder your thoughts on this are, if theatrical's not working, nobody wants to go straight to streaming. Like, don't we need a new type of distribution instead of trying to like, maximize what the current models? Shouldn't we like rethink this completely?
I think we're in the world of recombinant DNA of distribution, if you will, in that I think the possibilities of creating something totally new are pretty unrealistic. But I think it's the rearrangement of some of the processes, the reshuffling of windows, the different ways of engaging with audiences. I know how important it is to build your community, but the examples of success that have been offered demonstrate what logicians call confirmation bias, where the DIY cheerleaders point to this particular success or that particular success, and they skim the peaks, but they don't talk about the endless valleys that are
Yeah.
where most of the filmmakers are toiling for literally years.
Yep.
So I think, I also have to be brutally honest. I think there are too many films.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just the U.S. indie movement. I buy a lot of international films, and that's a different model altogether because they're all funded with taxpayer money through government subsidies and subventions, and that's clogging the pores of the system. So that's not making it any easier for the independents in the
Yeah.
U.S. But the reality is that I think there are new opportunities that move away perhaps from the big screen. We are wedded to the big screen experience. The tagline under the Kino Lorber logo is experience cinema. We're not abandoning the large screen experience. We value, I was chairman of the board of Film Forum for 9 years. And, I know how important the theater is, but I think theaters are evolving also. The smartest ones have really become community cultural centers, if you will,
Yeah.
that show movies, but they also have bookstores and video stores, if you will, and bars and food service, and a place like Metrograph is with someone like Metrograph, they're a great theater in New York, but you can't open a film there because they've got so many other things going on. They can't give you a 7-day run.
Yeah.
So there are other costs associated with this, but some of the best independent art house cinemas around the country are building communities, and that's really where the filmmakers are going to see the best response.
And I mean, I've written about micro cinemas and how I think that is really could be like a solution or a compromise or restructuring because I think the theater experience, if we can't save it, I think the most important part of it is the crowd. I think people want to have their film screen with a crowd. And that's the straight to streaming model. It just loses that. And um, while there are so many films that disappear, I, just not to belabor the point, but it's used so often, Hundreds of Beavers, like it probably would have disappeared, but because they did their self theatrical distribution and got to have that crowd experience, um, it brought life to it because seeing a film with a crowd is a very different experience than seeing alone. And I don't know, to me, the crowd is that needs to be saved somehow.
Well, those are the happy outliers, and the film that has that kind of core audience, is a very welcome event. But to get beyond that, it has to be amplified very loudly on social media and by actual film reviews and by the press and by the traditional industry that hasn't gone away. It's suffered and it's been damaged and diminished, but it's still a very important mouthpiece for curation. So, that was a very happy example, but I don't think you could, and you can go back and look at so many things like that were eccentric
Yeah,
achievements.
and I hate the Hundreds of Beavers example, so I just can't, nothing else pops to my head right now. But maybe the better way to phrase this is, as a distributor, if what you're saying, like the place like theaters, or I'll call them micro cinemas that also have bars or bookstores attached to them, or just this if that structure was in place, um, could it have the sort of Kino Lorber or Criterion like brand associated to it that people will just start coming despite the film if there is some curation, if there is a oh, this experience is going to be a good one. Um, yeah,
I totally believe they will. I think that they will go to a trusted uh, venue which has an identity built around the branding of quality and of certain kind of cultural interest or genre appeal, and they'll take their chances. They'll say, well, if this film is playing and it's sold out and there's another screen, I'll take a look at that. I think the 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 point I'm trying to make, though, about polarization is to find ways to start engaging more of the community that is achieving some success with DIY strategies, call it non-day or whatever, but they're not getting the full job done.
yeah,
And 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 they are piecing off some of their opportunities through working with this aggregator or that agent to try to fill in where they can't do it themselves. I'm saying that I think it's better for them to look at working with some of the boutique distributors. It's not just a pitch for my company,
Yeah.
who are paving those paths to get the job done with a brand association, with elbow to elbow with other films that have achieved distinction and recognition and value in the minds of their customer base. We're not going to filmmakers and saying, well, turn your lists over to us because we're going to just basically rip you off and mail to all of your hard-won customers information about our library. Well, that's not what we're doing. We don't even touch those lists. But I think there's a kind of a mistrust and a
Timers.
perceived issue
Finish
there.
your thought. Yeah.
Yeah, that could be overcome.
That has been our 20 minutes. I really wanted to sneak this in, so I usually won't do this, but because I had kind of pushed you to choose the subject of Godard, uh, I'm curious, is there hope for more films that will evolve the language of cinema, or is that just something that we've kind of put to the side? And
I totally believe it will happen. I think more and more filmmakers creatively experimenting. I talked in my last Substack about reading a film and
yes,
used Godard as a prime example with Goodbye to Language
yes,
and going back to Gay Savoir. I think there are all kinds of ways to envision the value of new forms of language. His film Goodbye to Language is
yeah.
almost a gloss for that opportunity. So I'm all in favor of it. I
I,
believe in the future. What
well,
choice do I have?
well, that's a wonderful optimism. Thank you for coming here. Thank you for doing this. Really has been an honor to have you. And thank you for all that Kino Lorber is doing. And I hope you're right. I hope we see more communal working together and realize that we're all trying to figure this out together.
Good luck with your new film.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Richard.
Bye now.